First, I would just like to really shortly introduce myself. I am Katrien and I'm a school psychologist. I studied at the university in Leuven, and for as long as I can remember, I always had an immense interest in everything related to education. And the combination with the psychological aspect for me was the moment, the aha-erlebnis, okay, I have to go and study school psychology. I've had a lot of work experiences. Well, as you know, in education, mostly it's all short, temporary experiences. But I think it's a really, it's an asset rather than a negative aspect. And that's also how I got to know more about the research field within education. And that's also how I eventually got the opportunity to start my PhD at the University of Hasselt. My research topic is about equal educational opportunities, which is a really broad topic, but the focus in my research topic is really on secondary schools and within the geography location of Limburg, the province of Limburg, which is also something to really keep in mind. First of all, I think it's important to provide you with some background, the challenge of education. And I don't think this is limited to Flanders, Belgium only. I think what I'm going to tell you is not new, but it is a fact that student population and education as a whole is currently being challenged by an increase in diversity. And with diversity, I really mean it in the broadest sense of the word. And also research still continues to highlight that the effect of individual student characteristics, also teacher characteristics, but for me it's about the student characteristics, continues to have a really large effect on academic performances. And what I'm focusing on is the effect of social economical background. We still see that students of low social economic backgrounds still have lower academic performances, lower possibilities to really continue higher education studies, and above all, have really high dropout rates without finishing their diploma, their degree, which of course leads to high societal costs. When you think about that, it's really unfortunate that research still keeps highlighting the fact that there still is a gap in performance between privileged and underprivileged students. And when I talk about privileged and underprivileged students, that's also in the broadest meaning of the word underprivileged. It's not only about students with different backgrounds, that's also about students with a disability or students with a migration background, another home language, etc. So it's really in the broadest meaning of the word. And this, of course, is a struggle for the students themselves, but it's not only a problem for the students. It's also a problem, a struggle for teachers, for school leaders, and society as a whole. We really need to formulate an answer, a solution for this really large challenge in education. And the problem is that although there's a lot of research in the education field going on, there is a rather negative bias. I don't know how the media tends to report about research on education, but here in Flanders, in Belgium, we really experience a negative focus. Everything what happens in education is going bad. Our educational system is bad, students are performing really bad, and yet that's also where the research stops. We see that some schools appear to be better in embracing diversity than other schools, and that's it. So That's where the research stops. There's no answer in why or how is it, what are they doing? No, it's all negative, and that's it. And of course, that's not really that's not just that creates a really negative sphere around education. It really demotivates people within the educational field who are performing really well, who are every day doing the best they can to really make sure that every student receives the best possible education. And I think that there's a really big problem in how education is perceived. And as I already mentioned, some school appears to be better in embracing, navigating the diversity, the continuous challenge. And as a consequence, the Flemish secondary education, the schools, still remain a big carrier of educational inequalities with a lot of negative effects. And now it's time for the next step. We have to look at the good practices. We have to really delve into the practice to search for the answer. Why is it that some schools are better in navigating this diversity, this challenging, this constantly changing reality? And to do that, I think it's really important to have a look at some specific schools to really to gain a better understanding of this reality. And also, above all, I think it's a really important step to counter the current negative emphasis and the negative look on education. So this is one of my studies in the larger PhD project. I really want to start from an appreciative approach, because I'm convinced and I really believe that a lot of good things are also happening within the schools, within education. And I really think it's important to provide schools, to provide teachers, to provide school leaders with the opportunity to share their knowledge and expertise and practices. I think it's really important to provide them with some kind of platform to highlight their expertise in order to counter all the negative criticism, what's been going on from media. I think this can also provide inspiration for innovation to other schools, and that doesn't have to be limited to secondary schools. This can also be taken up to the broader field of education, primary schools, even higher education. This can promote continuous improvement. And I also think I'm convinced that it's necessary to cultivate a growth mindset, to not only think in terms of obstacles and problems, but to really embrace the growth mindset by looking at possibilities and enrichments rather than obstacles, and to really build collaborative networks among schools, secondary schools, other educational levels. And I try to visualize this for my study, because I'm a really, really, really firm believer in the saying, what you pay attention to grows. And I think that also goes for education. I think you can always think about an example in your own daily life experiences. If you only tend to focus on the negative, well, you will only experience negative experiences. And I think it's really important to focus on the things that go well. And how do I want to look at the schools? How do I want to look at these good practices? I really want to use photographs. I really want to use the photovoice method. Why? Well, I also think you all know the saying, a picture says more than 1,000 words. And I think when it comes to topics such as inclusion, equity, equal educational opportunities, we can all think of something related to that topic, but sometimes it's really difficult to really find some common knowledge, common language about this topic. And I think I'm convinced that photographs or images can provide a common language and can really serve as a starting point to start a dialogue about different experiences and to really make sure that we're all talking about the same topic, the same concept, the same experiences. And also what's really important within my research, I already mentioned it, I really want to provide schools with the possibility to share their experience, their expertises, their practices. Well, I think one way to really visualize these practices is to really photograph them or to really create a visual image, a representation of it. So that's the reason why I chose the photo voice method. So in one of my studies, I will be performing a photo voice studies, and the guiding research questions for this study are: what are good practices in Limburg secondary schools in terms of equal educational opportunities? And what factors within the school environment contribute to equal educational opportunities? And the school environment is also taken really in the broad meaning. It's not only about purely individual student or teacher characteristics, it's also about the interaction between the students and the teachers. It's about the interaction between teachers among teachers. It's about the school leadership. It's really both the social and the physical school environment. I do think it's important to notice that concepts such as the national policy, those are not included because it's really about what schools are doing. So the policy about how our secondary school system is organized, that's something which is excluded in this study. It's really about what's happening in the classroom, on the school itself. It's a qualitative case study, so I'm looking for about 5 to 6 secondary schools in Limburg. And how am I going to select this school? Well, first of all, it will be purposive sampling. First of all, you have the geographical selection. It really have to be schools that are located in Limburg. And in Limburg, you also have the mining cities, the cities who are really characterized by a really diverse population from the people who used to work in the coal minings. So it would be really interesting to, within Limburg, select in the mining cities. Next, we will have a closer look at the student populations of several secondary schools in those cities, because of course, it's really important to select schools who tend to have a really diverse student population. And in Flanders, there are some indicators who provide us with information about the student diversity, such as educational level of the parents, in this case explicitly the mother's educational level, home language as such. So that is also something that will be taken into account. Next, another criteria is, of course, are schools willing to participate? Because it's a rather extensive study. It will take time and effort from teachers and school. So if they're already at the start saying that they don't have the time and energy or possibility to participate, okay, then that's really okay, but then it's not a good idea to include them in the case study. And of course, it's also important that school themselves believe in their practices, that they really happy about the way they are working in navigating the diversity, that they're not only looking on how do we have to manage it. No, schools that are really confident in their approach to diversity. So if a school is selected, then I will again select some teachers of that school. I'm looking for a group of 8 to 10 teachers to participate in the specific photovoice trajectory. So there's the photovoice part. Then I will also have a look at some documents. For example, the school reglement. I don't know if that's the correct word in English, but I lost it. Some policy documents about equal educations, inclusive educations, which are really about how the school looks at some topics. I will analyze it within the school, and then I will also perform an analysis between the schools, so an overall analysis. So really get a rather broad view on the practices. So as I already mentioned, photovoice method isn't a qualitative research method. It's also a combination of arts-based research and participatory research, which serves two main purposes. There's a purpose of knowledge production, to really gain insight in, okay, what practices exist in order to make sure that every student receive equal educational opportunities. What are some contributing factors within the school environment? And then the second purpose is the purpose of knowledge translation. Okay, so we gain a lot of insight in characteristic elements, ingredients, practices. How can we make sure that this is translated to the broader educational field in order that other schools, even other educational levels, can really do something with it? How can we make sure that it's not something that gets published as a manner of speaking and which isn't practical? So that's also a rather big part of this study. Since it's a participatory research method, the participants, in this case teachers, school leaders, are also co-researchers, and it's really about working together with me as the researcher. It's about capturing ideas, the thoughts about a certain phenomenon, in this case the diversity, equal educational opportunities. It's also an invitation for a really critical dialogue. The possibility to exchange knowledge, experiences, and expertise. And it's also, and I think that's the most important part, the opportunity to explain, to really shine with their own good school practices. Because in Flanders, it's really not that common for schools to share everything between other schools. Schools are really searching and trying out different practices for themselves, and there are possibilities to learn from each other, to collaborate. But still, when it comes to inclusive education or equal education opportunities, it's not really that common. So I think that's really something we should facilitate, and I hope this study is one way of facilitating that. Currently at this moment, I'm piloting my photovoice method, and here you can see it's a rather concise version of my photovoice method protocol. But this is one way to really visualize it. I think this is a really clear picture of what is going to happen. First of all, I selected one pilot school, and they selected some teachers who were willing to participate, and they received a 1-hour training. It was really a group session, a group talk, in which I provided them with more information about what is the photovoice method, what's the purpose, what do I expect from the participants, from the teachers, and also some practical arrangements were discussed. What's the time frame? What do they need? Do they have to take pictures from? How much time do they get? And a lot of practical questions, etc. In the next phase, the teachers are researching, I would say. So they are really in the process of taking pictures. And I will be coming back to that, but I tried to not provide a clear focus for taking the pictures. I explained to them it's about how you and the school as a whole works on establishing equal educational opportunities. And right from that moment, I got a lot of questions, but what do you mean exactly? What do you mean? Is it about my lesson preparation? Is it about how I interact with my students? And in this pilot phase, maybe I'm going to change that if that's feedback that I will receive, but I really tried to keep it as open and broad as possible, because it's not my intention to already focus on teacher factors only or aspects on communication and interaction. I really want to keep it as broad as possible. And that's something I really noticed that teachers are struggling a bit with. So in the next slide, I will provide you with some guiding questions to take pictures. But for me, the focus is on how do you make sure that every student receives the same opportunities? How do you make sure that some students that you think, oh, they can struggle or they are at risk to get behind, how do you make sure that they are included in the whole process of teaching, learning, and developing within the classroom and the groups? After that they have taken pictures, there will be a focus group with the teachers, and they will explain to me what their photographs and images, what they mean. And for me, that's a really important part, because for me, I know the schools a bit, but I really don't know them in detail, in depth. So it will be really interesting to see how they look at equal educational opportunities and how they work on equal educational opportunities. My biggest concern is that 2 hours is really not that much. So I will have to look at, so I will have to evaluate if that's enough or not. However, when you work with schools, you are really challenged by having limited time with teachers. So it's really difficult to receive some of their spare time between lessons or between breaks. So that's something to keep in mind. So that focus group will take place in each school, and after I conducted them within each school, I will also perform a focus group with one representative per school. So to really not completely to compare the schools, but to make sure that to see if there are some differences, other practices, or maybe it's a bit comparing, but comparing in a way, in such a way that each school still has their own strengths, their own identity, and it's not about placing value in the comparison. Maybe that's the best description for it. And most important also in the focus group is the question, what's missing? So teachers will have to take pictures, but what's left behind in the pictures? What was not possible to photograph or to visualize, but is also really important to mention. And that's something I actually received as a tip during the April conference in November, to really keep that in mind. It's not always possible to take photographs or to visualize something. So really keep that question in mind to make sure that you really, that I have all the information from the participants. After collecting all that data, I will create a school portrait on how they are working on equal educational opportunities. And in the next step, I plan to really discuss this school portrait with some students from that school, because you cannot perform research about equal educational opportunities for students without including the students in the research itself. So for me, I think it's really important to let them evaluate, let them have a look at the school portraits to really make sure, is this how you experience this? Is this recognizable, or is this something completely new to you? Is this not how you perceive your school, to really make sure that every student is on the same boat? Yeah. So I try to formulate some inspiring questions to have some more or less a guidance during the data collection phase. For example, what does equal educational opportunities mean for me? When I'm talking about it, I have a certain point of view about it, but I'm convinced that when I'm talking about it with my colleagues or with my husband, there are a lot of different opinions. Although we are talking more or less about the same, I do think it's really important to gain more insight in the meaning of the concept. Then for teachers, I also posed the question, how do I incorporate it in my daily classroom practices? In a broader meeting, what does the school do to make sure every student benefits from education? And also to really have an insight in the good moments. At what moment do I notice that I or the school is really successful in making sure that every student is involved, that I'm really successful in creating those equal educational students, the opportunities for every student. So after my first contact with the participating teachers in the pilot group, I sent them these questions. They answered, okay, that's already more clear. So I'm really curious if this helped them with taking the pictures. We'll see. The focus group is planned at the end of May. And the data analysis will be really focused on the narrative analysis. It will be really about capturing the experiences and why this is an important experience, why does it work, etc. What I hope to be deliverables, outputs for this study is the school portraits, school-specific school portraits, and also to really gain insight and overview of contributing factors to equal educational opportunities. And as I already mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I will really focus on factors on the micro and meso level. Macro level, such as really policy, national policy about education, will not be taken into account, but policies within the school will take into account. That's rather on the meso level side. I also hope to create something. It's still in the process of yeah, I'm still thinking about it. Some kind of inspiration guide, some checklist, a self-evaluation tool about equal educational opportunities in the schools. And of course, I also hope to deliver a scientific article about the use of the photovoice method within this research field. So a rather methodological article, because photovoice is often used from students' point of view, but actually not that much for the perspective of teachers. So I'm also really interested to have a closer look on that aspect as well. And that is also something I will be I will take up in the after the pilot study, how they really experienced the methodology of photovoice. That was in a nutshell.